Welcome to Metrics That Matter. We will learn how to make sense of your fundraising data to make better decisions and raise more money with less effort. Brought to you by fundraisingreportcard.com, a simple and free analytics and reporting tool for nonprofit pros. Now measuring is easier than ever with fundraisingreportcard.com.
How's it going?
It's a beautiful day here in the neighborhood, Tim. I'm doing well.
Yeah, I don't even know what episode this is.
I think it's episode 4, season 2. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Which one of us is in charge of the podcast? Ha.
So we got some questions today.
Yeah.
And if you want your questions on the podcast, you can send those to me by email. We'd rather have you call to 575-815-4573. Just leave a voicemail.
If this is the first show you're watching, you
don't watch audio, Zach. Unless you have a visualizer. I don't know how we'd look with that iTunes visualizer for the podcast.
This is the first time you're listening to the show. It's important to know that each week or every other week when we're putting out new episodes, we're answering questions from nonprofit professionals. So that's the phone number that Tim just gave you. Give that a call. Let us know what questions you have about specifically data. How are you trying to use data at your organization? What roadblocks are you running into? What impediments are getting in your way? We want to hear about those questions, and then we want to talk about them, address them from our perspective, and see if we can help. And yes, if you don't feel like calling in and leaving a voicemail, if you email us, we'll answer it just as well.
Yeah, so tim@imarketsmart.com is one email you can do the send in emails if you'd like. First up, we got TJ from Indianapolis, Indiana. He called in, just like you can, the 575-815-4573. And here's his message.
Good morning. This is TJ McGovern with a little bit of a head cold, so I sound probably from another planet. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. I run my own nationwide consulting firm. My question is, what lessons have you learned, particularly when the metrics from the fundraising report card are on the negative side around presenting that to a team or a CEO of a nonprofit, that they can accept it and take action to remedy the situation or the story that the information is telling from the fundraising report card? Thanks for answering this great question. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
So thanks, TJ. Great question and an important one because it's not all sunshine and roses and money just flying into your organization. Sometimes you get down quarters.
Yeah. Well, TJ, you did not sound like an alien, my friend. You sound great. It's good to hear from you. And he was referencing their fundraising report card, which is the tool that we have that helps build out some of these dashboards for key metrics. But whatever you're using, whatever tool or resource you're using to look at your fundraising metrics, just like you're talking about, Tim, and just like TJ's question, what happens when things don't look great? Since I've had my experience of looking at metrics at our organization, at MarketSmart, and sometimes they don't look great. Does that make me sad or down? No, because it signals opportunity. The thing that I always try and do, TJ, and it all comes back to this concept of positioning. So if you have a poor retention rate, it's how do you position sharing that with leadership? From leadership's perspective, they're probably going to be upset because it means we're raising less dollars. But how do we position that as an opportunity to grow retention into the future, to test out new objectives, new initiatives, and see if we can influence retention in the right direction? So again, like the parallel for me is at our organization, if we do have a down quarter, it's having that discussion. Why was it down? And that comes back to a culture that supports and not only endorses, but thrives with open discussion around the underlying metrics. What happened that went well? What happened that kind of was an impediment in our course to try and achieve success? So that's the whole idea here, is that when things aren't good, it's actually setting up the foundation for you to, obviously put things in the right direction, and it's positioning it in such a way so that you can facilitate that conversation with an organization.
It's almost a wake-up call in many ways, and learning from that.
Well, and learning's the big piece. Asking the question, why are we down? Let's stick with the retention rate motif. Let's say you look at it year over year. And last year it was 51%, and this year it's 39%. It's going to really be a jaw drop, like, oh man, what happened? But starting to ask questions around why. What was the organization's attitude and strategy geared towards acquiring new donors? So then were the team tactics at the team level geared around acquiring new donors? Was everyone so focused on acquiring new donors that we kind of forgot about our existing base?
Mm-hmm.
So asking that why question, looking at the organization's strategy and then at the team tactics, and then of course at what individuals are doing week in and week out, you can start to get a sense for, okay, we had this particular strategy. It took a year for us to learn the implications of that strategy. How are we going to frame and create that annual plan for this year, or the 3-year vision, so on and so forth? Asking the why question is hugely important. And then the quicker that you can get to those conclusions, the better. If instead of a year's time it takes to come to that conclusion, if we can get to that conclusion in a quarter and we can see that something's going poorly, we can file that away and we can say, okay, we're going to test something different this quarter, something with a little bit of a different pivot or a theme that's slightly different from that one because we saw a negative impact towards our strategy. So it's the why question. It's trying to get that feedback loop. So what's the impact on that key metric as quickly as possible, and then iterating and trying something new. Once you have the right thing that you're doing, whether it be like a donor welcome series or something like that, then you stick with it and you innovate upon that into the future.
And something to keep in mind, in fundraising report card, you're looking, this is obvious, but you're looking at donor metrics and the metrics of donations, right? You should cross-check that with your email metrics. If you have any metrics for sending out mailers, I don't know what kind of metrics you'd have with that, but metrics across channels and relating that to your donation metrics are going to be really important to identify weak points in your strategy.
You're 100% right, Tim. There's different inputs that provide different outputs, different information for you to gather. And what you're talking about with email metrics, sure, that's almost like, think about like a marketing funnel, like that's the tippy top of the funnel. And then we've got these donations, and then we're trying to cultivate relationships and get larger donations. There are metrics at each different part of that process. Fundraising report card helps at one distinct point: all of our existing donors. It's not giving you insights into major gift office or portfolio effectiveness, things like that. Or at the other end of the funnel, communications, mass email performance. But all of those could look positive, could look negative, should pose that why question, go from there.
Yeah. So thanks, TJ, for the question. That was great to dive into and hopefully helpful for a lot of you fundraisers out there. Next up, we have Jim from California. He called in just like you can, the 575-815-4573. And here is Jim's message.
Hey, guys. Thanks for doing a great job. My name is Jim Baranski. I'm with the Lung Cancer Foundation of America, calling from sunny SoCal. Hey, my question is, if there were one metric, one dashboard that every not-for-profit fundraiser should monitor on either a weekly or monthly basis, what would it be? Thanks a bunch.
So, Jim, thanks so much for calling in. Lung Cancer Foundation of America is an organization that I volunteer with. So it's great to hear from Jim and really appreciate that.
Yeah, Jim, thanks again for calling in. We really do appreciate it. So Jim's question, Zach, I want to do both. If there's a weekly metric and a monthly metric, I want to cover both of those.
So, Tim, you might be disappointed in my answer here.
Oh, no.
Hopefully not everyone else is. So this idea of weekly and monthly metrics, this is obviously going to depend on your strategy. And I want to use a little bit of an example here that we can walk through this. You're going to see that it's not necessarily as crystal clear as you may want it to be. So let's say you're an organization and you want to raise more major gifts, kind of on that same theme from the last answer. What should you be looking at on that weekly and monthly basis? If you're trying to raise major gifts, and let's say there's an annual goal of we need to raise $1 million from our major donors, weekly and monthly you shouldn't be looking at, did we raise the $1 million? Did we get, to 50,000, to 100,000, to 150,000? This in sales is a common problem as well, this idea in the for-profit world. Well, the quota is $1 million. So did you get to the $1 million? It's stupid. It's stupid to look.
Planting seeds, right?
The term is activity. So in this example, what you would want to be looking at weekly or monthly would be the activity. So weekly, when you're checking in with your team, and monthly, when you're looking at reports, did we have the right activity to help get us to our goal? So again, if the goal is to raise $1 million from major gifts this year, well, weekly we might want to look at, did we make the 10 calls to our qualified prospects this week? And did we connect with one of them? And monthly, did we get out X amount of solicitations for those major gifts? And what was the total amount of those solicitations? So you almost have to look at what is that kind of overarching goal that you're working towards. Again, this could be, bring it back to the donor retention example. Maybe as an organization, you're striving to go from 45% donor retention rate to 48% donor retention rate. Well, weekly and monthly, we're not looking at what is our donor retention rate. We want to look at the activities that support increasing donor retention rate. So weekly, you might be looking at, did we follow up with, say, 100% of our new donors from last week? Did we send them our one-to-one thank you card? That's going to be a weekly metric that you're looking at. What's the monthly or maybe even quarterly metric that you're looking at? Did we have visits with the 5 new donors that gave the most within that last quarter? Did we meet with them in one-to-one? Okay, that's your quarterly or monthly objective and that you're meeting. So it's not a great answer in the sense that there is no one-size-fits-all. It's not crystal clear.
And the metric you're looking at isn't actually in fundraising report card. Once
No.
again, it's a different metric as we talked about in the last one.
Exactly. Yeah, I wish we could build this platform that does it all. And maybe, maybe we should be talking to our product team about this. But it really stems from what's the strategy? What are we trying to accomplish? What's that goal there? And then breaking it down into, quarterly, monthly, and weekly. There is no one size fits all. We should be tracking our average donation amount every week. Please don't. Pretty please don't. It's a waste of your time.
Yeah.
You should be tracking the activities that influence that on a weekly and monthly basis, but then striving to achieve some sort of overarching goal or outcome.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Sorry, Jim.
Thanks for the question, though. Really good question.
Yeah.
And hopefully that was helpful, because there are other metrics you can look at outside of that first C that are helpful in this.
If we were on this podcast, Tim, and we told everyone the only thing you're missing in your fundraising repertoire is our awesome tool called Fundraising Report Card, it'd be such BS.
Throw away your CRM.
Yeah.
Throw away your organization for following up with donors.
No.
Yeah.
There's a lot of thought that goes into this. Fundraising Report Card's awesome because it crunches numbers and it provides reports. Those reports could be completely useless if you haven't thought about how you want to apply them or how they are applicable to your current needs and strategy. So it's thinking about the strategy, thinking about the monthly, quarterly tactics that are going to help you get there. And then especially on that weekly basis, it's almost like one-to-ones. Like if you were to sit down with your team or pose some questions to yourself, those would be so activity-based and so not focused on that end goal.
Mm-hmm.
If you're hiking up a mountain, you're not going to say each week, are we at the top of the mountain? No, it's are you making progress towards getting there?
Are we there yet, Zach?
I think we're getting close, Tim.
This episode is brought to you by us here at MarketSmart and the Fundraising Report Card. What is the Fundraising Report Card? Well, it's a free service offered at fundraisingreportcard.com that enhances your fundraising efforts with easy-to-use analytics and charts. Get your proposals approved faster by using these beautiful and elegant charts created automatically with fundraisingreportcard.com. You'll also find a great blog that dives deep into what data means for your organization and how you can use it effectively to make smarter decisions. Start learning and start generating beautiful charts by going to fundraisingreportcard.com. Now back to metrics that matter.
Next up, Sydney from Los Angeles, California, called in just like you can to 575-815-4573. Here's her message.
Hi, I'm Cindy Eicher. I'm from Lung Cancer Foundation of America. I'm in Los Angeles. My question is, how do you define reactivated donors in Fundraising Report Card? So, for instance, if a donor gave in 2014 but not again until 2018, would you pick them up in reactivated or would they be in lapsed donors? And second question I have, is there a way in the benchmarks to look at organizations like ours who get a lot of donations in tribute to someone who's passed away and see how often those donors are retained? Anyway, those are my questions. Thanks very much. Bye.
I'm incredibly appreciative again. Another LCFA team member calling in, so that's great. Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah.
So she had 2 questions there, right,
Two questions,
Tim?
yeah. What do you want to address first?
Let's address reactivation. This is not just specific to Fundraising Report Card. This is a definition that even like the AFP Fundraising Effectiveness Project, the AFP FEP, they have a list of definitions and things like that. The idea is, and we'll use her example, a donor gives in 2014. They stop giving, and then they give again in 2018.
Yeah.
So that donor is going to be considered reactivated in 2018, but they would also be considered lapsed in 2015, fiscal 15, if we're using fiscal years.
Right.
So a reactivated donor is simply someone that supports your organization in 1 year, then lapses, and then comes back in another year.
Yep.
So hopefully pretty straightforward. And that's Fundraising Report Card, how our algorithms work. It's how the AFP FEP defines it as well. And it's how your organization should look at it too. Mm-hmm. Now, her second question, and I think this is a really poignant and smart question. I don't have a great solution at the moment, but I think it's something that vendors like us or organizations like ours should be aware of, is this idea that there should potentially be benchmarks around organizations that receive a lot of memorial contributions. What is a benchmark retention rate to keep those memorial donors around year after year after year? Perfect example, I lost my mom to lung cancer. When my mom passed away a little over a year ago, so many people, it was incredible, donated to the hospital where she passed away, Mass General Hospital.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, it was incredible. How many of them are going to renew this year? Probably not many, if any of them.
Right.
And that's the nature of the game here for a lot of these organizations that are research or hospital healthcare systems or, cancer research, things like that, is what is that benchmark for renewing those people who gave that one-time contribution because Suzanne Shefska passed away or because someone else they knew passed away. So do I have that benchmark? Do we have that benchmark? No. We don't have even the metadata associated with our users to know if they are that type of organization that gets those types of contributions. Like it's a little bit complex to even think about, but that concept of having that benchmark I think is pretty compelling and something that is worth working towards. I wish we had more information, but we don't.
I'd imagine some CRMs would capture that.
Most CRMs that I'm aware of give you the capacity to mark when someone's passed away. And obviously, when someone's contributing in memory, on your donation form, you're going to ask, is this in memory of someone? And it will mark it in such a way, tag it in such a way that it's an in-memory contribution. So I know most CRMs are capturing that.
Yeah.
And then strategies around retaining them. I wish I was a fundraising professional, but that comes back to your organization's mission and how you can try and provide value to those people to get them to stay aligned. I don't know.
One way from FRC perspective that this would currently work, you would perhaps set up a different account, and in your export of data, you're exporting a list of people that they flagged that this was in tribute.
Yep.
And those are the donations that you're looking at. And then maybe you have a different account for everyone else.
And you don't even need the different account, just the separate upload within your account.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because you can just do separate CSV uploads.
Yeah, so you could export from your Razor's Edge database all in-memory donations or in-tribute contributions from the past 10 years. And you could upload that to Fundraising Report Card, go to your retention dashboard, and see what your organization's retention rate has been of those in-tribute contributors. So doing some pre-segmentation and uploading to FRC, awesome idea, Tim, would give you your organization's benchmark. To compare that to others, though, you would be able to compare yourself historically.
Yep.
Like we retained 6% in 2013 and 9% in 2015. Did we do something different that caused that? Great idea. You should absolutely. Cindy, send me an email. I'd love to help you do that.
Yeah, as far as benchmarking in a wider look at other organizations, that's something that it's not being done right now, I don't think.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of any other research group or organization that's kind of trying to provide that right now. It's so niche, but man, would that be valuable? Because then what if there isn't a standout organization that somehow is retaining half of their in-tribute donors? Go to a seminar where they're presenting so that we can learn what they're doing. That's why the benchmark would be really helpful, because if the benchmark says it's 5% and then there's some standouts, we can start to learn what they're doing well and try and make it applicable at our organization. But again, unfortunately, Cindy, right now I'm not aware of anything like that. You can, as Tim brought up, thank you, Tim, measure your own in-memory donation, retention rate, growth, acquisition, which is kind of unfortunate, but you can measure all of that within your fundraising report card account. Just do some pre-segmentation before you do. Great idea.
Yeah, and when you're tracking them, trying to consider the degrees of separation would probably correlate pretty directly to how much they would be retained donors. If it's a first degree connection versus a third degree, where that'd be a much harder thing to capture in your data.
In the CRM.
In the CRM,
I remember when I donated to MGH, I have a blog post on this, maybe we'll link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
I wrote I think the title was How Not to Acknowledge an In Memoriam Donor.
Right. Yeah.
Because I donated, which for me at the time was, and it still is a big gift. I donated $1,000 to MGH. Yeah. Big
sizable
gift.
Thing.
And Market Smart matched it. So we donated $2,000, and actually some of I think the staff here, the team here also donated. Okay, we donated a sizable chunk of change to this hospital, which is a humongous hospital.
Sure.
I think my mom passed away in the Sheldon T. Adelson Center of the hospital. So he's got $10 billion, and anyway, they have a lot of major donors. And my last name is obviously Shefska, Zach Shefska, and the person who it was in memory of was my mom, Suzanne Shefska. And I received no thank you, aside from the immediate tax receipt that was emailed to me. I received no thank you after a month. So it was by week 5 or week 6 that I wrote this blog post, and then thank you to everyone who reads the blog and shared it all over Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah.
I got a call from the PR department at MGH.
Wonder how that happened.
Yeah, exactly. And then I started having conversations with the director of development, blah blah blah, for the annual fund and things like that.
Mhm.
So anyway, I'm simply bringing up that's a first degree connection to someone who is, I think at the time I was 21 when my mom passed away, making $1,000 contribution. Like, cultivate me, man. Please cultivate me.
Yeah.
I want you so badly.
You
and you don't want me. So but that's it's not the organization's fault. Think how hard that
The
is.
structure of a huge nonprofit like that.
Oh my God! Think about how hard that is to manage that in your software. Okay, they both have the same last name. This is this gift, and he's this young, and he's in the field. Their software doesn't do that for them.
It should, but it doesn't.
Of measuring like retention rate around that, like, yes, that'd be great. This goes so much deeper.
It does,
That whole concept of in-memory contributions is so emotional and so intimate, but so tragically difficult to manage without having a human eyeball on it. And when you're MGH and you've got hundreds of millions of dollars coming into your organization, stuff goes through the cracks.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but it's literally why vendors exist, to try and help plug some of those niche holes. But anyway, this is not a plug for us. That's just,
But great question, Cindy, and opens a lot more questions.
And if people do have questions, Tim, where can they call in?
Oh, yeah, there's a phone number you can call into. So you pick up your box in your pocket.
You
has
really
glass
just
on
called
it.
cell phone box in your
You know,
pocket.
a cell phone or the landline there, if you still got one of those. You dial 575-815-4573, and you'll be greeted with a voicemail box that you can just say your question, and we'll have it on the show. And it'd be greatly appreciated if you do that.
Big time.
So 575-815-4573, and thank you for those that have already called in, and appreciate anyone else that's willing to send in their question. And thanks for listening to this episode. And anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up?
Episode 2-4 in the books. Sounds like 25's next. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, 25. I like that. That's a good number.
Yeah,
We'll have some
by
good
5.
questions. Yes. Tim,
5 is a great number. Yeah.
we're the math people. Oh man.
I'm great at math, obviously.
I'm looking forward to next week, Tim.